Hey there, my name is John Farrell, and I wanted to go over a project that I've been working on for a little bit. I got interested in, I'm involved in local politics. I got interested in Colchester's budget, and especially around people saying that Colchester is unaffordable or that spending is out of control. No one ever said why, right? People always say that things are out of control or things are happening um, that they don't like, but like how do we even talk about it? How do we look at the longer term trends? I'm sure we've all seen the really simple graphs of red lines going the wrong way and all this alarmism and things like that about Colchester spending, but no one's really doing the work to look at these things. So I decided to go to work. I decided to look into it, and I have these 4 or 5 conclusions about Colchester spending. One, I have my one here. The budget is growing slower than inflation. I think that's just a factual thing. Historically, over the years, we've grown slower than inflation. Two, real capita or per capita spending is down, meaning if we spent $3,000 or $3,100 per resident in 2007, and we spend like $2,900 or $2,800 per resident now. So like spending is actually kind of going down over time if you look at it that way. Now, on the flip side of that, tax burden has actually gone up depending on the lens because the median home is taxed 1.8 percentage points higher than they were 2000 in 2007. A lot of this is not due to Colchester spending. It's due to ECS funding, which is the educational cost sharing from the state. But it's not because of the budget going crazy. It's actually the budget's actually really stable and kind of thrifty and responsible. But it's really the states and unfunded mandates and educational costs that have really driven up the burden on taxpayers by a few percentage points. The fourth point is it's really about state aid. It's not about Colchester spending or anything. It's about kind of state aid. And another way, when I looked into this stuff, I found that our peer spending is like our spending to peers, both demographic peers and our neighbors, is really reasonable. We're not spending more than our neighbors in a lot of cases. We're spending a lot less than our neighbors. A lot's a subjective term, I suppose, but like we're spending less of that now. You know, I don't. I think that when I got into this, I didn't know what to expect, and I used AI tools to do a lot of this work. So, like, I just want to call that out. I use something called Claude Cowork, which is an agentic research tool that went and got all this data and prepared the graphs. It doesn't mean all this is right. There's so much data that's been poured into this, and I work on it like 5 to 10 minutes here or there. It's been like a months long project actually when I have some time, and I'm only talking about it now, I guess, because the budget's coming up, and I kind of want to get this out there. I feel pretty proud of the work I've done, and I don't want to go do more mulch. I'm doing mulch. It's before it gets hot. I don't want to go back outside. I'm just doing this now, so I can take a little break and showcase it. You know, I know that people are going to point out in some of the comments, I'm sure, that I'm a Colchester DTC member and try to discredit me, which is fine. I mean, if they want to do that, people want to do that, that's fine. But this isn't work. This isn't. I'm not doing this on behalf of the Colchester TTC or with them or anything like that. I'm doing this on my own because I just think this is interesting, and I think these agentic research tools are interesting. Um, so that's how I got started with this. Now, what's else to call out? So the other thing to call out is, yeah, it's made with AI. I'm obviously biased, so I'm completely wrong. This video is going to be rough. I have to do it kind of quickly, and it's going to be about 20 minutes, I think. I've done a couple drafts. I say something stupid and I redo it, but eventually I just got to send this thing out and hopefully enjoy it. The one thing to call it is like I'm open to collaboration on this. If people want to see numbers in different ways or see different trends, let's do it. Right? Let's look at that. Let's figure this out together so that our conversations of the budget are elevated and better in the future. I'm just going to try to go quickly through a lot of the big points. People can look at this in different ways. So like. I'm going to go to this budget trends page. Now, overall, Colchester has grown 33.5% over 18 years. But if we judge it with inflation, inflation has gone up 51.3%. So we're actually growing slower than inflation. So you can see here, this is the total budget, town and education here in the blue line, and this is inflation in the red line. You can see we've trended below that. Now this is the index, so it's about the growth rate, and we're exercising fiscal restraint. We're being responsible with our money. We're not spending a lot of money per person, even with all the like the senior center and things like that. We're not seeing that kind of growth. Like this isn't out of control to me. If this is out of control, if we're spending more than inflation, that means we're getting new things and more. We're spending too much money in some ways. This next chart is just the budget increase versus the inflation rate. You can see it's kind of all over. I got to skip down. Now, this is the adopted budget versus year-end actual spending. A lot of people try to say that Colchester, like we like hide money. We say we want 50 million, we only spend 49, and that million is just a slush fund. You can see it's not really the case there. It's just there's variance in here, but it's not like anything too noteworthy. The variance is 0.67%. We spend what we budget for, and that's actually pretty good. Colchester, it's a large budget, so like just being close is really awesome. Next is that this is one of the key things that I really like pointing out is that in 2007, inflation adjusted, we spent $3,100 per capita, meaning per person in Colchester. And now we're spending about 2650 per resident. And you can see here, this is the some of the lean COVID kind of years where we had these cuts, and from the former first selectman who cut a lot, which I think was a mistake, by the way. But even so, like Colchester, if Colchester spending was out of control and unaffordable, I'd expect this line to trend upwards, right? But instead, it's kind of trending down. I should put a trend line on this. But instead, we're trending down, meaning we're spending less per person than we used to. And I think there's even been some population decline, so that's even more impressive. But let's keep going down. This is just a per capita spending chart with inflation versus education. You could definitely see education's taking up a larger and larger share. That's pretty reasonable. Actually, now here's another interesting graph, one of the most interesting ones. This is the household income versus total tax levy per capita of all across CT towns. Now, what that means is that what this is kind of pointing out is that rich towns spend more stuff because everyone's got more money. You go up to Canaan or some of the rich towns in Northeast or Southeast of Connecticut. I mean, South, Northwest, and Southwest of Connecticut. A lot of rich towns. Lyme's a rich town, for example, these shore towns. Everyone's got a lot of money. Everyone's got these huge mansions. They don't care what the tax bill is. They just want services, right? So, like, they'll spend a lot of money. And this is the trend of kind of all the towns in Connecticut when you compute the income, the average income per person versus how much they spend. And Colchester is below the trend line for sure. And you can see here we're below our neighbors in the blue dots, and we're around our neighbors in the green dots. Blue dots are our neighbors. Green dots are Colchester DRG peers. We have actually more peers than four, so I'll probably have the other ones in here. But you can see we're a thrifty town. This is saying we don't spend as much as our income would suggest. We're not what's the term? We're not spending beyond our means, I guess you could say, is a way to do that. Like we're not buying fancy cars. We don't like make a lot of money and buy fancy cars. We make a decent amount of money and we buy reasonable cars. That's what kind of this says to me. Um, this is just a comparison of population growth and inflation. I don't think there's anything too noteworthy here. You can kind of see the real capita per spending has gone down. Total budget over time graph, nothing really interesting there. You can see here, this is a cross section of inflation on the red, Board of Education in purple, and then town in blue. And you can see over the years, the town is the one, the thrifty, the town's the thrifty kind of part of our budget. The education spending has actually spent above inflation for a number of years. Now, I don't know if that's good or bad, but I mean, we're kind of our town spending is what's been really constrained and reasonable, right? That the town is way under inflation a lot of these years, growing slower than inflation a lot of these ways. Next is a mill rate comparison. I don't think mill rate comparisons are really that great because of revaluation schedules, because some towns revaluate in different years than, well, that's not really true, but revaluations kind of throw monkey wrenches into the works here. And you can see here, I guess these graphs do show that we have a reasonable mill rate compared to our neighbors. Only like 28 here, something like that, 29 I think it is, 28 something. And our neighbors, Marlborough is up to 35, East Hampton's up to what, 38 there? That's crazy. But like here, uh, these were this is our adopted budget per resident. You can see we're lower than our neighbors. I mean, Hebron here is spending 450 per person, or Salem spending 4,200. I mean, that's a lot. This is our per capita spending. We're lower than all these other towns. In terms of per capita, these are towns that make similar amounts than us as we do. And here's like the mill rates. Colchester's mill rate is, versus the demographic peer towns, we are lower than even the towns or among the towns where there's been revaluations. So that's great. I know I'm going kind of fast here because this video could take like 20 minutes if I go slower. But anyway, this is town insurance costs. This is BOE-related insurance costs, nothing that interesting. Let's go to the Board of Education spending. Now, the big thing to understand about education spending is the lack of ECS funding. Now, ECS is called educational cost sharing. It's money the state gives to towns like Colchester to offset their education costs. Now, back in this is the change when of what ECS should be if it kept up with inflation. I didn't say back when. So like the 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 uh, the purple line is ECS adjusted to the government deflator. Actually, not sure what that means. I gotta get a more plain English explanation of that. But here's the inflation again. We've all familiar with the inflation line. But here's the actual ECS revenue. See, it actually dropped, meaning the burden on taxpayers really increased in these years, and then it stayed flat. All while education costs have gone up. Now, the state should be paying us around 7.6 to 8.7 million dollars more per year, which would be such a significant tax break. It would totally change the landscape of Colchester education and our own tax burdens. So, like when we look at the numbers around educational spending is rising, but that should have been buoyed by, or should have been offset by the ECS revenue spending. I mean, just imagine education budget that's where $7 million of that is paid for by the state. I mean, that would totally reduce the amount raised by local taxpayers as far as their property taxes. And you can see here, this is as a percentage. Back in 2007, ECS was 38% of the budget, almost 39%. Right now, it's only 27% of the budget, or 26.4. Incredible, right? That's so much money that we're missing out on from the state. So, I mean, people are probably feeling this. You have to be feeling this. If you were paying tax, if you lived in Colchester for the last 17 years here, you felt this, right? You think I mean, your taxes are going up every year, and that's because the state's just funding less and less percentage of the budget. Now, we're getting to the staffing. We can get into the enrollment declines. The students per teacher has gone down over time. The students per admin has gone down, and the cost per student has gone up. But I mean, that's kind of just fair with inflation and things like that. We talk a lot about admin blow. I don't see it in the data. I don't see that we have this huge admin blow. The purple line is kind of static, which makes sense, right? I mean, you just need a principal for a building, right? Even if you only have less students, you still have the same amount of staff or similar amounts of staff and responsibilities. Should this? I don't think we've seen the admin blow in Colchester. Should this number go down? I'm not sure. Um, I can't talk about that right now because I have opinions about that, but that's not for this presentation. So you can see over the years we have reduced teachers. People like to say we haven't reduced teachers, but you can kind of see here there used to be a lot more certified staff. The administrators have stayed the same. Instructional specialists has gone up, and that's like really important. So math coaches, curriculum coordinators, teacher support, not directly students, but teacher support. And here you can see that the real driver of the increases, percent changes have been from these instructional specialists. But what's notable here on this heading is that the cost per student over time has gone up, and I think cost per student is a really bad number. And the reason why is that the cost per students are really reflective of how many students we have, not necessarily spending. Let's say you have a bus and you want to drive that bus across country, and it costs $1,000 to drive that bus across country, and the driver and fuel and whatever. And you have 10 people on that bus. Well, now it costs $100 per person to drive that bus across the country. And you take that same bus, you put 5 people on it, and it's $200 per person to drive that bus across the country. It's the same bus, the same trip, the same driver, but the cost per rider has gone up. Well, it's because you're just spreading the costs out more. And when you look at Colchester spending $22,000 per student, that's really reflective of the declining enrollment, not really doing more. We're doing less per year, and I think that's just easily understandable. We'd have to pay for parking and uh, pay for things we never did before. And I think there's just less in the schools as there were. We just don't think about it because who remembers what was cut in 2010, right? Anyway, you can see that special education is one of the biggest cost drivers. This is a lot about the unfunded mandates from the state. I don't think this is a bad thing. It's just it's a reflection of what students need. I think that this is great spending actually, because before we just didn't. Well, let's not get into that. You can see here the salary growth for admin versus teachers. Nothing notable here. There's no evidence of administrative bloat. Admin costs, salaries rise higher just because they're more highly paid. They have more certifications in education, so you'd expect to see it kind of go up. The cost per student, you can see here, this is kind of what I want to highlight. The cost per student has gone up over time, but it's because of the enrollment, not because we're doing more. This is just, you can look in some of this stuff is not really conclusive. Certified versus classified salaries. You can look at this. We're definitely doing more in classified versus certified. This is where the budget's been cut. I mean, it's kind of hard to, this is indexed, not like a net revenue or net number, which is kind of silly because, of course, textbooks have gone down, but textbooks are a small part of the budget anyway. I know I'm kind of speeding through some of those. You can look at them if you want. This is all public. So here's where a really interesting graph. This is the household income versus pupil spending, which is how much we make in median household income versus how much we spend per pupil. Richer towns spend more money per pupil. Down Darien, they're spending like $50,000 per student or something like that. And Colchester is below the trend line for the state, meaning we're spending less than the statewide median. We're actually above the statewide median in income, but we are paid below the student median in students per student. Now this is great. It just means we're thrifty with our educational money. If we met the median, we'd be spending more per student. And you can see here our peers, we spend more than our peers, just some of them. I need to get more of the demographic peers in here, but anyway, and we spend below most of our neighbors, but we're below the trend line. So there's no way to say that we're spending like, we don't have a luxury school, I guess you could say. We don't have, we're not like a fancy school system. We're a great school system. That's why my wife and I moved here, but we're definitely not in this like category where we're not like a Cadillac school system. I hope no one says that I think we're a bad school system. I don't mean that at all, but we're just below the medium of what we could afford, I guess, if you look at the data like that. This is just summary written by AI. Here you can look at that. This is all the sources where all the data came from. So definitely go check it out. Again, this is all done with AI. There's some stuff about the para staffing from COVID monies that kind of went nuts. But definitely look at the data. Now, I have more. Oh, I got to turn off my pointer here. We're going to go up to the top. We're going to go with the education comparison. Now, what I also did was, when we talk about education, we want to compare our education for other towns. Where's my pointer? So what I wanted to do is say, if like Colchester education spending would be out of control if we were growing at a faster rate than our neighbors and peers, right? But here's how it works out. So Colchester is the orange line in terms of per pupil spending. Now, per pupil, again, is a bad number, but useful for comparisons, right? We have our DOG peer average. We're spending slightly more than our peers, right? But also not that much more. And we're spending less than our neighbors, right? And you can get into the graph here and view all the towns, meaning Colchester here is the maroon line. You can see here we're spending just in the trend, right? We're not doing anything fancy. We're not an outlier. We're just right in the middle, right? If we were out of control, you'd see it. I mean, what's going on here in Basra? That's a lot, but you can see we're just in the middle of the pack here, right? There's nothing notable besides how average and reasonable this is. You can see here, there's other ways of looking at it with bar charts. You can see the 10-year pupil growth, the change in per pupil spending. We're a little higher than average here, but that could be reflective of, again, enrollment, not necessarily spending. You can see the budget side. This is the net education spending, or the total. This graphs. So here's the spending trajectory versus peer averages. This is where it's interesting. This is the total spending, and it's like nearly flat. I mean, there's nothing like anything too noteworthy to see here, and we're trending along with our neighbors the same. This is your per pupil change, reasonable. Mill rates, not really great. You can see here we're about the same as everybody else. This is the revaluation chaos here from all this, but you can see we're just in the middle. Nothing is out of control or on going crazy. This is our budget history. You can see here the years where we've actually shrank versus the years we've grown and how much that changes. We have grown more in recent years, 3%. There's 5% here than previous years, but it's slightly trending up. But I think that's a concern. But when we look at the trends, everyone's trending slightly up, so we're right along. We're right where we should be, I guess you could say. Now this is going to be controversial. I don't even want to show this, but I think it's important. We talk a lot about the ratio of the town versus education side of spending. We are higher than a lot of our neighbors, right? We're noticeably. Uh, we spend 77, 76. What is this? Yes, about 77% of our money in education, and our neighbors in blue and our peers in green spend less. A lot of people talk about what the ratio should be, but when you look at the town spending and how we sit there, I don't think it's a. I don't think that we actually. I hate to even say this but I don't think that we're spending more per student. We're not significantly outspending per student. We're actually underfunding the town in a lot of ways. Um, if we get in the comparisons here, you do see we're on the ratio we're higher, but that's not reflected in any other metric. Meaning we're not spending more per student noticeably. We're not spending more as a total of the budget. We're just underspending the town. If I want to add more graphs in here to show what would happen if we spent more on the town side of things. I think people say that education's out of control, but it's really not. Our spending in education's around where our neighbors are, but our lower town spending offsets this ratio. I'm sure that's going to be controversial, and there's going to be a lot of discussion on that. But I mean, this is just what the data shows. If you want to see a different way, let me know. These are just some tables, so you could play with the numbers. The 10-year growth summary. Enrollment declines. You can kind of sort these tables and see what you need to see. Again, here's all the citations. My email's down here. I have the data. I got to get the data more public, but I'll figure out a way to do that after this. I just want to get this out. So I know we're at 21 minutes. I'm really impressed if you're sticking around. We're going to go to the last part of this, or second to last part. We're going to do income versus spending. This is where we're going to get the most hateful comments, I'm sure, on Facebook. Uh, but what I want to show here is the relationship between income and spending. So like Colchester's budget is the this blue line here, and you could see the CT medium income, CPI inflation, the townside budget and education, all trending relatively in the same direction. You could definitely see here the dip in the townside spending, but everything's trending along, meaning we're kind of trending with income and economic conditions. Now we can also trend this with Social Security. You can see that inflation and Social Security are actually rising faster than the town side and the education budget, meaning people are receiving more in Social Security benefits than the town has increased its spending. And then here, versus inflation adjusted, you can see that Colchester's budget, inflation adjusted, is actually below both income and Social Security benefits, meaning income and Social Security benefits have risen faster than the Colchester's budget, which I think is a really important thing to call out. I don't think that this graph doesn't change anything for people on a fixed income that can't afford to live in Colchester or to pay their bills, but I think it's something we should keep an eye on and look at. I think a good budget spends less than the rise in inflation and more than, I mean, like you want income and inflation to always kind of bracket the budget, and we don't want to grow too fast, we don't want to grow too slow. Um, I've been talking for 23 minutes. I can't really say what I need to say here, but I think it's a great thing to look at. You can see here year-over change, budget, wages versus Social Security, cost of living. You can look into that. This is the median income versus Colchester's budget. As you can definitely see, the median income has risen, or has risen faster than Colchester's budget, which I think is reflected in some of these numbers. You can see the per resident budget as a share of total income has gone down over time, meaning as wages rise, we're per income spending, per person spending less over the years. I'm trying to get this through. Now here's where the homeowner tax bill matters. The tax bill on a median price home as a share of typical income has gone up. So remember, a lot of time we pay taxes with our property taxes, and the burden for people has gone up compared to income 1.8 percentage points higher. So this is something we need to be aware of and keep in mind when we increase the budget. You can definitely see that even though we're spending less per person, the burden on homeowners has increased slightly faster than wages. You can see here, this is where it's really important. This is the percentage of Colchester's budget is funded by local property taxes. And you can see here, we're growing higher. This is where the squeeze is coming from, right? And let's talk about ECS again. Go back to there. We're getting less money from ECS, so therefore, we have to pay more in taxes. And that's where I think the real squeeze is coming from. Not that Colchester's budget is spending, the town or education is spending that much more. We're just getting less from the state, meaning we have to offset that with property taxes. So the squeeze really is from unfunded mandates and the lack of state aid, not from outrageous spending on Colchester's side. In fact, our spending has gone down per person, Meanwhile, our tax burden's gone up because we're just getting less money from the state. And this is kind of interesting. This is a load. This is kind of interesting and important for business growth. But our residential real estate has gone down over time as terms of percentage, where our motor vehicles and our commercial has gone up. So there has been business growth, but they are paying more of Colchester's taxes than people or than residents have. So, if we want to talk, and there's definitely a business personal property has grown and commercial and industrial real estate has grown, which is good to see the growth, but we have to be aware that businesses are paying more of their share than they used to, even though we are paying more per homeowner than we used to too because of the lack of state mandates. Um, this is the Social Security benefit growth versus the budget. You can definitely see Social Security is growing faster than Colchester's budget. We should do more graphs on this to see how it's caught up and what the burden is for people who are on fixed Social Security incomes. This is the mill rate versus the medium home price. This is just this is the recent post-COVID real estate explosion. I don't think this is that interesting. There's some charts here and data source and methodology here you can look at. And last page, almost under 27 minutes, is just a glossary of terms that you can see. There's more data in here. You can just email me and I'll add more information if anything's unclear. But I think that this will help. I'm still learning this stuff too. The AI tools are actually better at. I've learned so much about the budget, and the AI tools are so good that they're really giving us a good overview. But I think that's the end of the video. I've been talking for 26 minutes straight here. If you made it through this whole thing, that's incredible. I barely did. But again, I'll try to surface all these data files and sources. Let me know if you want to see anything in different ways. And yeah, I hope this. I don't know if this will change how you vote, but I think it will change how we talk about Colchester's budget, and that's all we can really hope for. I hope everyone survives the next couple days of 90-degree heat, and have a good week. Take care.